So now let's talk a little more specifically about how the pass the message game is the same as how neurons work. Okay, so neurons, just like you were doing, when they pass messages from one another, so these different colored, the yellow, blue, and pink here are just different neurons, right? Sending a message from an axon, right, or sorry, synapse to a dendrite, right? Again, the dendrite's like the hand. Don't worry about the specific words, but right, the hand receives the message, the synapse passes the message in a little chain here. All right, so when neurons are passing these messages, they're actually coded messages, just like in the game that you were playing, that can mean different things. So for instance, in the game you were playing, a different code meant different things. So if you got red, you were supposed to do one thing, versus if the code was PLT, you were supposed to do another thing. In your neurons, they actually pass messages, coded messages, where one chemical means do this thing, or pass this kind of message, and a different chemical means pass this other kind of message. Okay? So same way, just like in your game, there's coded messages. You don't actually literally have a neuron talking to another one that says, hey, do this thing, right? It passes little messages in chemicals. Okay? So this is the deal, though. That can be a problem because when the codes are similar, or the neuron fires too early, and by fire I mean like shoots out the chemicals from one to the other, so the firing is the passing of the message. If the codes are similar and it gets confused, right, it might do the wrong thing and misfire, right, send the wrong message. So this yellow one sends the right message, it fires these chemicals to the blue one, but the blue one then says, I'm confused, it thinks that these chemicals mean something else, it gets the wrong code, so instead of thinking that you said red, it thinks you said read, and now it's going to misfire by passing the wrong message to the pink neuron, which is then going to mess up the whole process, right? That's what happens. Just like in the game that could have happened, this is what happens when your neurons get confused with the chemicals. Or if it fires too early, so sometimes a neuron, before it gets a message, it just fires off a message to the next one, even though it doesn't know what the right message is. So this same as in this game, if you had, thought you knew what was coming and just went ahead and traced red on the person in front of you, even though you didn't know quite yet, or you got the R and you're like, oh, it's red, and pass it on, fire too early, same thing can mess it all up, because again, the wrong message gets to this blue one and it passes on the wrong message to the next one in the chain, and in the end, your body, your brain, whatever, will do the wrong thing. Okay, so same thing as in this game, right? It's there's a big threat of firing too early and messing up the message, or getting confused because the messages are similar and doing the wrong thing. However, the more you do something or practice it, the less likely that your neurons will misfire like this, right? If you were practicing the pass this message game all day long every day, right, you wouldn't have too much problem getting the right signal and understanding that, hey, I shouldn't go too early, right? I should wait, make sure I'm really clear on what this thing is. On the end of the chain, right, your brain wouldn't be able to read the code faster, so you'd know, okay, red means this. You would sort of suddenly automatically just be doing the thing that is associated with red, whereas before in this game, right, the first times you're playing it, when you're playing it today, your last person in the chain is reading the code, making sure they line up. Okay, I'm clear on that, and then they act. Again, the more you practice it, the more your body just knows what the code means and does the right thing without having to think about it, right? Then you're just kind of getting automatic, which makes everything go faster. You can do more. You don't have to think as much about it, so you can add on more complicated messages or things that you do to get better at that skill. Okay? So really, if you do something a ton, right, like you practice it all day, every day, your neurons are going to specialize and only pass that message, making it really effective. So generally speaking, your neurons can pass a whole lot of different messages, and they make these chains where maybe you will pass different kinds of messages through the neuron chain. But if you do something so much, your neurons will actually start to specialize, and they might just focus on passing one kind of chemical or just one or two chemicals instead of like the many others that they could pass, and they will only react to those chemicals that pass a message, because the more you practice, it's telling your brain that this is a really important pathway and thing that you're going to do. So again, the more you specialize, the more you get used to. Say you had a chain in your class playing the pass this message game, and this chain only passed the message red. They knew that if I get, I'm only going to get a message if it's red, then you would be really fast and know exactly what to do, because the person in the front would be like, if you're talking to me at all, I'm doing the red related thing, right? Same thing in your brain. right? Your neurons will specialize with a whole lot of practice, which makes you really fast because then it knows, hey, if I'm getting any message, I know exactly what to do, and it doesn't even have to translate it. Okay, so this is how your brain works. This is how your neurons work, right? Going one step more than what we've talked about before, because it's really important to know that what is happening actually in your brain, how your brain is changing, how your brain is adapting, and what it really means to get better at something and to learn something is when these neuron connections get really good and they know how to pass the message, how to translate the message, how to act on the message much faster because you've had so much practice. Now, again, I want to say this is also how you can get worse at things, because if your brain gets used to passing the wrong message over and over again, which happens if you're doing it wrong but you don't stop it, right? So if you are doing math and you're trying to go too fast and you're doing it wrong over and over again and you're not catching yourself, right, you will actually make a really strong chain of neurons that pass the wrong messages over and over again. So you'll do math wrong, and then it'll be really hard actually to stop because your neurons will get really good at being automatic at doing that wrong thing. That's where bad habits come from, right? Is passing this message of doing this wrong thing over and over again without stopping it, without giving feedback. It becomes automatic, and your neurons get really good at passing that particular message. Right? So it's really important to keep that in mind. You need to practice things well. You need to get feedback so that you don't make that mistake.